What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to EP09. And we have done it, ladies and gentlemen. We are officially at 5,000 subscribers on EP09 Bodybuilding. Before I started this video, I just wanted to take a second to thank each and every one of you. Anyone that has commented on a video, anyone that has dropped a like, shared, interacted in any way, I really appreciate you guys. Next up, 10,000 subscribers, 50,000, 100,000. You guys, there is no slowing down, and the sky is the absolute limit. So thank you very much for everyone for your support so far. Let's get into the video. All right, starting this one off with an update from Behrouz Tabani at 13 weeks out of the Mr. Olympia. This footage actually posted by his coach, Milo Sarshev, who still remains very optimistic that Behrouz will make it to the Olympia stage. And Behrouz definitely looks on track right now. He looks absolutely insane. The conditioning is definitely on point. You know, I think that the combination of the size, having the freak factor, as well as the aesthetics overall, you know, that tight midsection, really flowing lines, very good package from Behrouz. He continues to improve. But one area that he needs to improve even further is the quads. Behrouz still needs to bring up that quad sweep. Pretty much the only criticism that you hear when it comes to Behrouz is that his legs do not quite match his insane upper body. But without a doubt, the conversation out there is that Behrouz could be within top 6, top 8 at the Mr. Olympia despite the quads. You guys, I'm really not sure about that personally. I think top 10, absolutely. But we really have to see this guy in the lineup on the day to really know where he was going to place. The question, of course, remains whether Behrouz will get his visa to the Mr. Olympia or not. And at this point, we are not seeing any further updates. This would be the third year in a row that Behrouz Tabani misses out on the Mr. Olympia competition if he does not make it this time around. But you know, you really got to give it to this guy. Despite the uncertainty, despite not knowing if all of the sacrifice would be worth it, you know, putting his health on the line, you guys, when it comes right down to it, Behrouz Tabani still hopeful that he will make it to the Mr. Olympia stage for the third year in a row. But Behrouz Tabani is not holding back. He has pushed himself to the limit, right up to the finish line in hopes of a miracle. Without a doubt, this was one of the craziest versions of Behrouz Tabani that we've ever seen on a bodybuilding stage this year at the Dubai Pro. And you know, the fact that Behrouz actually won this show, I think speaks to the fact that any potential corruption that you see in the IFBB when it comes to giving an Olympia qualification to someone that may have no chance of actually making it there, well, certainly that can at least be negated, I think it's safe to say, by a competitor showing up and being absolutely undeniable. And that's exactly what Behrouz Tabani was when it comes to the Dubai Pro. He was the clear winner. There was no getting around it. They had to give him the qualification. And personally, I think without a doubt, there can be political influence in bodybuilding. It being a subjective sport, I think that it's probably inevitable that we'll continue to see these things. But again, if you're a competitor and you show up absolutely undeniable, they will give you the win, because the backlash online is not something that the IFBB wants to deal with on a regular basis, trust me. But as for now, Behrouz Tabani continues to push forward. 3 times now qualified for the Mr. Olympia. 3 times he remained in shape, continued to push himself to the limit, and really with nothing certain but the fact that the uncertainty still remains. Still hoping for a miracle. We'll see what happens with Behrouz Tabani this time around. All right, next up, we have an update from Hassan Mostafa, someone that we have not spoken about on this channel for quite some time. And when I saw these updates from Hassan, the only thing I could think of really was, what is this guy preparing for? When you look at the overall physique that Hassan is carrying around right now, he is absolutely massive. Now, that is nothing new for Hassan, you know. I think that this guy could wake up out of bed, not train for 2 months, and still have this kind of size, honestly. But you can see the striations coming through in the shoulders, the front delts, the arm separation. Is Hassan Mostafa preparing for something right now when it comes to competition that he is not yet announcing? And I think it's possible that he's actually doing that based on what I'm seeing from these updates. So from there, the question really would be, what show is Hassan going to do? There are very few shows left for anyone to even try to qualify for the Olympia or even just to compete to begin with. We've got the Italy Pro that's coming up. We've got Tampa, we've got Texas, and we've got the France Pro. That's it at this point, you guys. So if Hassan is planning on stepping on stage, then he better make it happen soon. It looks to me like he could be maybe on track for the Italy show. I think that's about 8 weeks away. Robin Strand also competing in that show coming up. But I'm really not sure, because when it comes to the conditioning factor for Hassan, of course, as always, it is always his Achilles heel. This guy, if he could get in shape, I think that he would probably stand out right now. The mass monsters are making a comeback in bodybuilding, and Hassan Mostafa is most definitely a mass monster, you guys. Last time we actually saw Hassan Mostafa on stage was the 2024 Chicago Pro on July 19th, actually almost a year ago to the date, where he took 8th place. And you know, I think we've actually seen worse versions of Hassan than what we saw at the Chicago Pro. You can see that there is some decent detail in the quads here. Actually, one quad more than the other. That might just be a lighting thing, I'm not really sure. But the separation in the arms is very good. The back separation actually was very good as well. Definitely needed more separation in those hamstrings, the shredded glutes, absolutely. Even the calves, I think we could stand to see more. But if he could pull it off, like I said, with the mass monsters really making a comeback in bodybuilding right now, this would be the time for Hassan Mostafa to get back in, throw his hat in the ring, try to get that Olympia qualification, and really match up with some of these guys that are making their way onto the scene, like, you know, Nexzilla, for example, really bringing that mass monster era back into the light in professional bodybuilding right now. Even without that really razor sharp conditioning, I still think that he could do fairly well, you know? Could he place higher than his best placing at the Olympia of 11th place in this current era of bodybuilding? It's a very interesting question. You guys let me know what you think about this version of Hassan Mostafa. Do you think that we'll see him compete before the end of the year? And if he does end up qualifying for the Olympia, do you think that he could improve on his best placing of 11th to date? And we have another physique update from Regan Grimes at 13 weeks out of the Olympia. Now, as of right now, I think that Regan is definitely on track to bring a very good package to the Mr. Olympia. With 13 weeks to go, this is still very good, you guys. But the question is, was Regan going to do the France Pro? You know, that's coming up on September 27th. During an interview with Tarek El Guindi on Olympia TV, he did express some interest in doing the France Pro, which I actually think that he should do that show. It is 2 weeks before the Olympia. He is already qualified. He is working with a new coach right now, Dom Supersliced. He is no longer working with Boss of Outlaw. And I think it would be a perfect opportunity for them to do a show together before the Olympia, because I don't believe I'm mistaken on this. These guys have never done a show together. I mean, there are massive, massive learning curves, especially when it comes to the physique of Regan Grimes and how he really reacts in those last number of weeks of prep. I think they should definitely do a show before the Olympia. If they don't, well, they run the risk of it spelling absolute disaster for Regan Grimes. The last show that Regan did being the Toronto Pro this year, where he actually took 2nd place to Sasan Harati. There's definitely things that Regan and Dom Supersliced can improve upon when it comes to this package of Regan Grimes. I think that there's definitely more room when it comes to overall fullness for Regan. And I think that he could accomplish that without necessarily sacrificing any amount of conditioning. Even if he does sacrifice just a little bit of conditioning from what Regan could bring at his best, I think it would serve him well, because when Regan comes in small, it is very, very noticeable, and it really throws off his whole physique, because this is a guy that needs to put on that size. Now, from the back, you can see this guy was very, very good, but still, you can see just a little bit narrow in the lats. I think it might be a little bit of a camera angle when it comes to that right now, you guys, but look at the hamstrings, the separation in the hamstrings, absolutely world-class without a doubt. Lacking that depth in the back overall, though, you know, that's where the fullness comes in. Let that muscle press against the skin, you know, and really show that you can come in bursting full while maintaining a good level of conditioning. That is the formula that Regan Grimes needs to figure out with his new coach. But Regan is absolutely adamant that he's going to bring something different this year's Mr. Olympia. Without a doubt, just look at this update. It was actually from about 14 weeks out. This is a very, very good version of Regan Grimes. If he can bring the conditioning and bring this level of fullness, this is something that could get him into that top 10, top 8 as a potential. We could see Regan Grimes there again this year. I want to hear from you guys in the comments below. Do you think Regan can make it into the top 10 at the Olympia? Or do you think he could go even higher and make his way into the top 8 given the current lineup? Or maybe you're on the spectrum of Regan going the other way outside of the top 10. Like I said, you guys, that could be possible. He has a new coach. We know that Regan is very, very touchy when it comes to the last couple of weeks of prep. You know, his body only responds a certain way. But with that being said, Dom Supersliced is very, very well known for really wanting to hit those health markers when it comes to bodybuilding preps, when it comes to competitors. And I think that's something that Regan really needs. You know, he's got so many food allergies, you guys. It could actually work in his favor. So you guys let me know where you think Regan Grimes is going to place at this year's Olympia. For me, I'd put him somewhere around 10th, but I'm still not sure if it's going to be above 10 or below 10. I'd really like to see him do the France Pro so we could get a better idea of exactly how Regan is going to look working with his new coach. All right, last up, we have the weekly check-ins from Nick Walker at 13 weeks out of the Olympia. This is becoming routine for Nick Walker. And, you know, that's because this guy is very, very confident right now. And he should be. This looks to be a very, very good version of Nick Walker this far out of the Olympia. But, you know, they say that the scale is just a number. And really, it all comes down to the look that you're going to be bringing on stage, you know, when it comes right down to it. But consider this, okay? Now, this next one on Nick, you know, I noticed something that really took me by surprise when I saw his latest update here at 13 weeks out. This is honestly something that, when I realized some of this stuff, I was like, what the hell is going on with Nick Walker right now? What is this guy up to? So look, this is what I came up with. Now, I want to go back and look at the 18 weeks out mark for Nick Walker when it came to his weekly check-ins. 18 weeks being on the right, 13 weeks being on the left. You can see that the conditioning in the quads at this point, you know, he was much closer to the Pittsburgh Pro at that point as well, you guys, closer to competing. So, you know, maybe a little bit more detail that we were seeing from Nick. You can see a little bit more detail in the shoulders, I think. And you guys, these are the basement pictures. It is the same lighting. It is the same spot that he takes these pictures. So we do have an amount of consistency here, okay? He did not say what his weight was at 18 weeks out. However, he did say what his weight was at 17 weeks out. Nick saying that he was weighing between 277 and 278 at 17 weeks out. You can still see the detail in the quads, you know, just a little bit more in the shoulders, maybe a little bit more of the abs that are etched out as well. Consider this at 277 to 278. 1 week later, 16 weeks out, Nick sitting at 280 pounds. We're starting to see a little bit of that detail in the quads. You know, we're starting to see that go away as well as the shoulders. Still pretty decent in the abs, but maybe a little bit closer to what we're seeing now. So again, 17 weeks, 277 to 278. At 16 weeks being 280. Continue on to 15 weeks out. And I did missize this a little bit, you guys. I apologize. But still, you can see 284 pounds is what Nick weighed here. So this is up about 7 pounds from his 17-week out mark. Continue again to his 14 weeks out mark, 285 pounds. So up another pound, up about 9 pounds from where he was at 17 weeks out. Continue again to what we're seeing now at 13 weeks out, okay? And Nick Walker is sitting between 287 and 288 pounds. You guys, that is a difference of about 10 to 11 pounds from the 18-week out mark to the 13-week out mark. So the question is, what is this strategy that Nick Walker is now implementing? You know, Nick is pushing up the weight to try and come in even bigger. At least I think partly that could be the reason. The other reason could be that Nick can deal with and tolerate the additional, 10 to 11 pounds that, he has to lose within a 12-week period right now. He was shredded at 20 weeks out. So I think that this is a different starting point that Nick is at compared to some other competitors. And I think maybe that's all the more reason it makes sense that he's doing essentially a 12-week dieting down phase. But I think in part, no, there's no getting around it. This is a bit of a ballsy move for Nick. I mean, how many other Olympia competitors are still intentionally putting on weight at 13 weeks old? And I do think that this is intentional. This has to be by design. I mean, in 5 weeks, Nick and his coach Kyle Wilkes, they definitely would have seen this significant of a change. You know, they would recognize these minute changes. So significant changes like this, definitely by design, okay? So this intent is either something that Nick knows will definitely work, or it's something that I think Kyle Wilkes is hoping will work for Nick to bring his best to the Olympia stage. Now, all of this could be for Nick to continue to progress in his training as well. You know, is this a direct result of how Nick is progressing in his training? You know, this guy is still getting stronger at this point, 13 weeks out of the Olympia. And, you know, it's actually funny because Nick used to be criticized for his training. Once he started doing this kind of very slow movement, you know, very controlled, lower weight, Jared Feather type training, Nick was criticized for that very, very heavily. Now he's literally being called the king of perfect form. You've even got guys like Tarek El-Gindi saying that Nick could come in and be the next Mr. Olympia, which is in stark contrast to comments that Tarek has made in the past about Nick Walker, you know, looking like he could be a box standing next to guys like Rafael Brandao. Funny how the tables can turn on that. But my question is, when do Nick and his coach Kyle Wilkes finally flip the switch? When do they start reducing the calories and get that detail back and really start pushing to get Nick in the center of that first call out on the Mr. Olympia stage? I would honestly say the perfect time would be at the 12-week out mark. Any longer, and I think it could potentially backfire on them. But look, I want to hear from you guys in the comments below. What do you think about this potential strategy of Nick going up 10 pounds between the 18-week out mark and the 13-week out mark? It really is very interesting, this strategy. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Check out BayouMuscle.com. Use code EP10 at checkout. Appreciate all you guys supporting the channel up to this point. And again, we have reached 5,000 subscribers on EP09 Bodybuilding. Thank you everybody for your support. We are moving forward in 2025. All roads lead to the Mr. Olympia. But I'm going to wrap up the video right here. Thank you guys for tuning in to EP09. Be sure to like and subscribe.